Hi, this is Andre, and thanks for checking out Fantasyland. Fantasyland is integrating the wisdoms of history based on fact and truth into present culture. The roots being synthesis, history, and Sophie, as in philosophy. Sophie, the Greek root meaning wisdom, knowledge. And I hope you had an enjoyable 4th of July, marking the 249th anniversary of the USA. Today we're going to talk more about Chapter 22, Fantasyland. Last week we covered parts of U.S. history up through the 1800s. Today we're going to be talking about the 1900s and early 2000s. Fantasyland is a term used to describe one's perception of reality, one's neuroreality, when that perception is far from actual reality. The following will mostly be quotes from the book Fantasyland, How America Went Haywire, a 500-year history, published in 2017 by Kurt Anderson, that will provide examples of Fantasyland. And recall, your neuroreality is the perception of reality by your brain and the 100 billion neurons. In the early 1900s, an advanced technology came along that was indistinguishable from magic and dedicated to making the pretend seem real, and the basis of big business, that is, movies. A kind of quantum change occurred in the culture. The difference between fantasy and reality, as perceived by one's neuroreality, narrowed suddenly, viscerally, profoundly. Movies made it easy for almost anyone, anywhere to enter a magical realm where they were teleported everywhere to see anything. Not paintings of exotic places or descriptions of imaginary characters, but actual people in actual places, alive and moving. No previous medium seemed so powerfully and uncannily real. Here is Calvin Coolidge. As business boomed on every front after his re-election in 1925, he said, "The chief business of the American people is business." Yes, it was. But in a larger sense, the business of Americans had become the business of fantasy. That's why the stock market crashed in 1929, when fantasy met reality. In 1949, the Soviets tested their first atomic bomb. The anti-communist hysteria quickened and spread. Loyalty boards were set up in every federal department, and thousands of U.S. government employees were fired or forced out. In 1950, Joseph McCarthy said he had a list of dozens of State Department employees who were members of the Communist Party. Names known to the Secretary of State. His list, he variously claimed, consisted of 57 or 81 or 205 officials. He later said that President Truman was the puppet and captive of some of his communist cabinet members, the executioners of a conspiracy on a scale so immense as to dwarf any previous such venture in the history of man. None of this was true. And a Gallup poll found that over 50% of Americans had a favorable opinion of him. For most of the 20th century, national news media had felt obliged to pursue and present some rough approximation of the truth, both sides of the story. But in 1987, the FCC repealed the fairness doctrine. And Rush Limbaugh's National Radio Show launched in 1988. It was free to thrive, and others promptly appeared. Followed in 1996 by Fox News. With the elimination of the fairness doctrine, a new American laissez-faire had been officially declared. If lots more incorrect, preposterous assertions circulated in our mass media, that was the price of freedom. Here's Karl Rove, senior advisor to George W. Bush. In a 2000 interview, he said, "You are in what we call the reality-based community. You believe that solutions emerge from your judicious study of discernible reality. That's not the way the world really works anymore. We create our own reality." Here's Charlie Sykes, a conservative talk radio host. In 2017, he said, "I played a role in that conditioning by hammering mainstream media for its bias and double standards. But the price turned out to be far higher than I imagined. The cumulative effect of the attack was to destroy much of the right's immunity to false information." This is the conservative talk radio host John Ziegler. He made a similar comment in 2016. "We've effectively brainwashed the core of our audience, and now it's gone too far because the gatekeepers have lost all credibility in the minds of consumers. I don't see how you reverse it." And I'm sure you know Kellyanne Conway, counselor to President Trump. In January 2017, in a news interview, she said, "You're saying it's a falsehood. Our press secretary just gave alternative facts." Now, we're in the digital revolution with the internet and the cell phone. And you and I now have astounding access to information and ideas and cultural artifacts and people. In every pocket, there is now a library, a phonograph, a radio, a movie theater, and a television, as well as a post office, a telephone, a still and video camera, a recording studio, and a navigation system. It's advanced technology nearly indistinguishable from magic. And Kurt Anderson, who I've been extensively quoting from his book, has referred repeatedly to full Fantasyland events and phenomenon. Here we've referred to magic movies, the 1929 stock market crash, the McCarthy era, repeal of the fairness doctrine, and various quotes from Rove, Sykes, Ziegler, and Conway, which brings us now to the digital revolution and the internet and the magic of your cell phone. Information at your fingertips. Starting around 1995, everyone could browse the internet. And Anderson goes on to say, "The way internet searching is designed to operate is democratic to the extreme. The prominence granted to any factual assertion or belief or theory depends entirely on the preferences of billions of individual searchers. Each click on a link, trillions a year, is effectively a vote pushing that version of truth toward the top of the pile of results. So let's call the year 2000, the first year a majority of Americans were online, the unequivocal first year of full Fantasyland." Classical Greece, as we mentioned in Chapter 1, from around 500 to 330 BC, was when math, science, literature, and the arts blossomed. But what happened after that? Athens and Greece returned to astrology, magical cures, alchemy, and fantasy. In Anderson's final statement, he says, "Fantasyland has been the norm for the run of humanity. The unusually rational and scientific centuries here and there along the way, like the last few, are exceptions. Dominant cultures have had their enlightenments and golden ages before, but then return to primitivism and murk." With our neural realities in mind, the question to ask now is, where will we go as a nation?